PNR, passenger name record, has been one of the most contentious files to travel through Parliament lately. The idea is for mass storage of passenger air travel information to help security services and police track terrorists and criminals. After years of delay, due mostly to privacy fears, MEPs on the Civil Liberties Committee have voted the measures through. The file was led by Timothy Kirkhope.
Timothy Kirkhope, many thanks indeed for joining us. Perhaps you could just explain what today's Libe Committee voted on.
Well, I think first of all they have voted convincingly right down a list of options that were available to them on the compromises which I brought them all together to give me. You could see the size of the voting list potentially was sort of nearly 800 amendments. But in fact, we managed to get that down to a small number of compromises. And that was as a result of an enormous amount of work which has been going on, and you rightly said 3.5 years, but it feels like perhaps a century as far as I can feel. One
of the key problems that MEPs, I think, on the left found particularly was this question of data protection. How did you get around that?
I think, like all these things, you've got to have a balance. We do have considerable threats, and they're not just terrorist threats in Europe, they're also threats of criminality, major criminals operating, trafficking in people, drug running, things like that, which are going on, people coming into Europe and travelling in Europe, who actually are people we need to be able to share some information which allows the police and the intelligence services to actually detain these people and to prevent danger to the citizens. And the Belgian authorities, you can ask them, and they will make it clear that a very large proportion of those involved in drug running, drug offences, have been detained as a result of information which has been obtained in this way.
Is the threat that Europeans face now, let's say compared to 3.5 years ago, with jihadists arriving in Europe or indeed leaving Europe, greater now than it was 3.5 years ago?
I think the threat continues to increase all the time, but it's not just in one category or another. I think there is a much greater threat from major criminals, there is a much greater threat from terrorism, and frankly, I think that we do need to do something to protect ourselves more than we've had up to now.
What do you say to those people who, at one point or another, have opposed this legislation on the grounds of too much privacy invasion, that in fact the real job is to get police forces and security forces to exchange known information rather than to launch a mass data collection service?
I think they're wrong about that. I mean, obviously, we want to make sure, in fact, that the information is transferred, but we also want to make sure that there is protection in the use of that information and that it is not allowed to be just in the hands of anybody. I mean, basically, we've got a lot of precautions, a lot of safeguards in place.
If the process of negotiation with Member States and the European Commission that you're now embarking on is successful, when might Europeans expect PNR to be in place?
We would like to get through the administrative and legislative process by the end of the year if we can. And in terms of the practical deployment of PNR systems, that will obviously be a matter for Member States and how they actually get it together and how they combine together, because there will be a lot of combination work going on, I think.
Timothy Kirkhope, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Appreciate
Pleasure.
it.